a listener production.
Hi, it's Helen Smith here with you. Welcome to the afternoon edition of The Briefing. Coming up in our deep dive, today marks the grim 2-year anniversary of October 7, and talks have started between Israel and Hamas on the future of the Gaza war. So how much closer are we to reaching a permanent ceasefire? That's coming up. First though, let's check the afternoon headlines. It's Tuesday, the 7th of October. Sticking with Gaza, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has opened question time this afternoon with this to say.
The largest loss of Jewish life on a single day since the Holocaust. Over 1,200 lives taken without mercy.
The PM later condemned a pro-Hamas slogan painted on a blank billboard in the inner city of Melbourne that read, "Glory to Hamas." October 7 also marks the start of a bombardment that has killed around 67,000 Palestinians in Gaza, according to health authorities. And Israel's actions have been labelled by a UN Independent Commission of Inquiry and other organisations as genocide. Meantime, 22-year-old activist Greta Thunberg was greeted by a cheering crowd in Athens after being deported by Israeli authorities. Israel said it expelled 171 activists this week, including Thunberg, who were part of the global Sumud flotilla attempting to bring aid into Gaza. The world's wind and solar farms have generated more electricity than coal plants for the first time. The milestone represents a crucial turning point for the global power system, according to a climate think tank, Ember, that found that renewable energy not only kept up but outpaced the world's growing appetite for electricity during the first 6 months of 2025, resulting in a small decline of coal and gas use. The world generated almost a third more solar power in the first half of the year compared to 2024, and wind power grew by just over 7%. And Zelda Williams, the daughter of the late actor and comedian Robin Williams, has spoken out against AI-generated content of her father. The actor and filmmaker posted to Instagram telling users to stop sending her AI videos of her dad, saying, "You're not making art, you're making disgusting, over-processed hot dogs out of the lives of human beings." Back in 2023, Zelda joined the Screen Actors Guild's campaign against AI, criticising those wanting to train AI models to create and recreate actors who cannot consent, like her dad. Now it's time to get into our deep dive with Dr Eyal Mayroz, a senior lecturer in peace and conflict studies at the University of Sydney, on the anniversary of October 7, 2 years on when Hamas militants killed 1,200 people and took 250 hostages. And since then, more than 67,000 Palestinians have been killed, with the IDF now controlling more than 75% of the Gaza Strip, leaving more than 2 million Palestinians displaced. But as Trump's peace plan enters talks, could we see an end to the war on Gaza? Eyal, 2 years on from October 7, what have the reactions been on the ground from people and politicians leading up to this anniversary?
In Gaza, we've heard initially a lot of skepticism. I think there's a bit more optimism than, say, 3 days ago. Whether that will become a reality and to what extent do Palestinians actually believe that this ceasefire will go, especially beyond the first 72 hours, I'm not sure. But certainly, as far as I'm concerned, we're a bit closer than in the last 2 years to finally allowing the Palestinians in Gaza a bit of a reprieve and hopefully more than a bit. On the Israeli side, yes, again, cautious optimism, but maybe more so than in the past, especially with the 60 to 70% of the Israeli population that has been pushing for end to the violence. So yes, a lot of waiting in the next few days to see what is going to happen.
And how close are we to a permanent ceasefire?
Well, I can easily paint two scenarios, both well evidenced. The first scenario will be the plan would work out, and the second would be the plan would fail. So I think there's a combination here that we didn't have in the past. One is a total exhaustion by not only the people on the ground that have long been exhausted, but also by the mediators and by the Americans. The second, and a follow-up from the first, is that Trump has finally decided to put his foot down and pressure Netanyahu in the way that he hasn't done so until now. And that is, I think, very critical. The third also relates to the clout that Trump has with the Arab states that have led to them, so far at least, supporting the plan, even though grudgingly because of some last minute changes that Israel has managed to insert into the plan, but still supportive of that. And I think that's really critical because that has isolated Hamas more so than in the past, and to an extent where it is in a bind in terms of not liking, obviously for good reasons, the plan, but at the same time having very little options of completely opting out.
And if the plan doesn't work out, what would be the second option?
Well, as I said, Hamas is facing very grim realities. It is being asked to release all the Israeli hostages dead and alive, or life and dead, in the next, the first 72 hours of the plan going into motion. And that will mean for the Hamas that no more bargaining chips as it had in the past. It also means that if the plan goes ahead as it is now, that Hamas will have to surrender all of its weapons, which means that it will be in the mercy of Israel and American goodwill, which we don't have stipulated in the plan. In other words, there are no explicit guarantees or American guarantees in the plan for what will happen if should Israel decide to renege on its part in the plan. So not a very good option for Hamas. There are no clear timelines either for Israeli withdrawal or for Palestinians taking over in the future of, in this case, Gaza, but also a Palestinian state that will include both the West Bank and Gaza. So there are a lot of gaps, a lot of holes. The plan is biased towards Israel, and the Hamas is very unhappy with it, but whether or not it will be able to change anything is unclear. From the Hamas perspective, a lot will depend on either support or rejection by the Arab states of allowing the plan to go ahead as it is versus trying to push on their part changes that will help Hamas agree to the difficult concessions that it's been asked to take.
And we'll touch on more of the ceasefire plan in a moment, but we have been seeing a lot of pieces coming out today about children who were born on October 7, who are now 2 years old, and they've grown up not knowing anything but war. What do the next few years look like for them?
This is going beyond the ceasefire agreement, I think. Should the ceasefire hold, then obviously end of violence and hopefully a very long process of rebuilding Gaza, rebuilding the destroyed infrastructure, hospitals, education, simple things as accommodation and heating. All of these need to be sorted out. There needs to be a lot of money and a lot of effort coming into the Strip. And this will only be assured if the ceasefire seems to hold, because a lot of the countries, mainly Gulf states, that have put money in the past into rebuilding Gaza from future wars or fighting, are now kind of losing hope that their good money will go waste should Israel go back into the Strip with its army. So I think that will depend to a great extent on the how solid the ceasefire will continue, which again in turn depends on the Americans, depends on Trump, because the current Israeli government has already signaled that some of the provisions or some of the concessions it's been asked to take in the plan are not to its liking. So the Americans will need to be able to hold Israel accountable and to hold Israel to its part in the plan.
Anthony Albanese has come out in support of the peace plan. What did you make of the PM's statement?
Well, I think it's obviously that for Australia and for a lot of the Western countries, the plan is a great achievement on the part of the Americans. And to some extent, I think also the French-Saudi plan that preceded the Trump's plan that helped a lot to prepare the actors and prepare the ground for this plan. So Australia had a small part in supporting the recognition of a Palestinian state. But obviously, one of many, many factors that coalesce together into what we have today.
And you just mentioned there Australia was part of a group of nations that recognised a Palestinian statehood at the UN General Assembly last month. How significant was that?
Well, I think the jury is still out. The timing obviously wasn't great. Recognition of Palestinian state should have taken place a long time ago. But I think overall, this needs to continue. The Americans so far in the Security Council, which is the body that is authorized to recognize a UN member state, have vetoed past efforts to authorize this. But should the world coalesce around recognition, and we have now over 80% of the total UN membership in support, then if this continues and if the world doesn't go back to other things once the violence ends, then I think it is really important to continue to support a Palestinian state that will need a lot of support. There's so much to do, a corrupt Palestinian Authority at the moment, economically, socially, a lot of challenges politically that will need to have a lot of support from Australia and from the rest of the world.
Now, talks between Israel and Hamas on the future of the war on Gaza have just started in Egypt. What can we expect from these talks?
Well, what we're hearing so far is that the focus is more technical on the identity of the Palestinian prisoners to be released and on the stages and timelines for the Israeli withdrawal in one stage after the other from the Strip. I think these are really important. I don't think that this is insurmountable. From my perspective, I think the main challenge will be in relation to things such as the Hamas disarmament, willing to give up their weapons. That'll be a major issue. And the second one will be to have the Americans, in this case, providing guarantees that should Hamas disarm, then Israel will not take advantage of that and go back into the Strip. I think this is really critically important. And the third is the identity and the ability of the plan to provide Palestinian legitimacy for whoever is going to control Gaza, because at the moment the plan is talking a lot about the international actors overseeing that, and that's not Palestinian agency, that's not Palestinian legitimacy, so we need that as well.
Now, you've mentioned this a few times, that it's going to take a while for Palestinians and Gaza to rebuild, in a sense. If this ceasefire happens, what's next for the people of Gaza?
Well, first, the sigh of relief that they can actually continue to live. There's a lot of damage there that will still continue to take effect in terms of the starvation and the long-term trauma that, as you say, children have experienced and the whole population has experienced. So they need a lot of help with that. But also, obviously, the most simple things such as shelter, food, clothing. If Gaza is to be rebuilt, something that will take years, they need to have some kind of accommodation. The plan does offer guarantees that they will be allowed to stay, or if they leave, to return to Gaza, which I think is important. No ethnic cleansing there. So I think this stage is set, but they'll need the funds, they'll need the support, and they'll need the peace, or at least lack of violence, that will allow these major challenges to be advanced over the coming months and years.
Eyal, thank you so much for joining us on The Briefing.
Thank you.
That was Dr Eyal Mayroz there from the University of Sydney. And that's it for this episode of the afternoon edition of The Briefing. We'd love you to subscribe wherever you're listening from, and you can follow us on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. We'll be back in your feed this evening with another beefing episode on Greta Thunberg versus world leaders. I'm Helen Smith. Catch you next time.